You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
If you run a service drive, you know these days first impressions matter. But when your advisors are tied up with inbound phone calls, they tend to neglect their other, more important duties. And did you know 75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions and routine requests? Still, the average dealer misses up to 30% of inbound calls, adding up to a ton of missed service opportunity and increased customer churn. 68% of callers actually go elsewhere if they can't get through, which means you could be losing $60,000 to $70,000 every month in service revenue simply from missing calls. So who will pick up? Introducing Brooke.
Hi there.
Your best service scheduling assistant. Brooke is the first intelligent digital voice assistant to answer, handle, and appoint all of your inbound service calls. Hiring Brooke means absolutely no call goes unanswered, boosting your customer satisfaction and reducing your overhead costs. And talking to Brooke is like talking to a friend with human-level understanding in a friendly conversational voice. Her conversational intelligence is built on millions of actual service industry conversations, making her the easiest onboard you'll ever have. She can handle any volume of calls and follows your policies every step of the way, 24/7. That means even when the lights are off, Brooke is always on.
And I can do it without missing a beat.
You really do check all the boxes. Book with Brooke today. Visit Brooke.ai or call 866-942-1236. Finally, the perfect match.
See that light above the bathroom door over there? That's a big time saver for our technicians and other recon staff. The light goes on when the bathroom is occupied. Now techs keep working until the light goes out. Then they know for sure the room is empty. And when they're busy there, they're also catching up on the news. Not bad news, but news they need for the job. I post these where they can't be missed. Too often, the search for the right product brings valuable time. This inexpensive detailer's cart organizes supplies. Now techs lay their hands on what they need without delay. We got these time savers from Rapid Recon, the reconditioning software company that's always defining better reconditioning solutions for dealerships like yours. When the goal is to get cars through recon in 72 hours or less, every step, every minute, every better decision made helps towards that goal. For more recon efficiency ideas like these, talk to the recon experts at rapidrecon.com.
Good morning and welcome. If you are going to be at Canada's Used Car Week in Toronto, that would be June 27th to 29th. Feel free to join Jeff and I as we're doing a panel on subprime at the used car event, which should be really interesting. We're going to have three guests, Kim, who's been on the show before, Larry, and who's the third guest, Jeff?
You caught me off guard. I feel so terrible. From
Approval Genie. Approval Genie. So Approval Genie is one of the largest subprime dealerships in Ontario. We're gonna have Larry from the US because we have to have an American on the show for some reason. No, we're just kidding.
Actually, we did have to get special approval from Immigration Canada for Larry. It seems he is on the gray list. So,
And then we're gonna have Kim from Buy It Smart. She's gonna, I'm sure, bring the heat for the dealers who are, I'm sure, aren't expecting subprime at that scale. So it should be pretty interesting. So if you're gonna be at Used Car Week in Toronto, it's from the 27th to the 29th. Our show will be on the 29th at 11:30. If you're not there, don't worry. We'll be streaming it. And usually it's one of the bigger shows in Toronto, in Canada for dealers. I think like 500 dealers, I think. Jeff?
there is a new subprime initiative for financing EVs that are 5 years old or older at new car MSRP pricing. So that'll be coming up.
Rock it all. All righty. So it was kind of hard to, yeah, I'm already live. Kind of interesting with books. I wasn't sure what to do. So my inventions, I think every electric car maker probably owes took their hat off to Nikola Tesla, who basically came up with a lot of the technology that's in every electric car. So I thought if you're not already looking at him, you probably should be, even though his name is obviously on a car company. The Electric Vehicle Conversion Handbook, which I thought was really interesting because I think there's going to be a lot of money to be made in converting existing vehicles to electric, because I think that selling everything electric is going to take longer than governments seem to think. And then Elon Musk on how it's a really good book on him. So if you're familiar with Musk or you want to be, it's a great book there. Go ahead with the disclaimer, Jeff.
As always, of course, we do say our disclaimer because the views and opinions of the AutoHub show are not necessarily that of our guests, which are their own, and we disavow any knowledge of anything we don't agree with. And if you'd like to see more, please check out the actual disclaimer on the AutoHub show website.
And also, we need to do a special shout out to one of our guests who was supposed to be on today. Unfortunately, her mother had a stroke, so she couldn't make it. So our prayers are with her and her mother as she recovers in the hospital, I think in Toronto. Is that where she is?
It's in Toronto. It's Katrina Gentile, who's a journalist who's big on EVs and has probably driven more EVs than our friend Brent there has, just because she gets invited to all the cool new stuff. So
nice.
So
yeah.
our EV's worth 50% more. That's the show. So let's get into it. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Well, again, good morning. Thank you. And this is Are EVs Worth 50% More? And this is actually now unofficially the Brent CV show, who is joining us from, I would say it's, what is it, Naperville, Illinois there, Brent?
Yes, indeed.
Brent is the king of Teslas and warranties. And, Elon Musk calls him on every move he ever makes. But Brent, say hi and welcome again. Tell us a bit about yourself, and thanks again for joining us.
Well, he didn't call me on the Twitter deal. Otherwise, I probably would have advised against it. My name is Brent Seavey. I helped to set up the used car remarketing department at Tesla. Worked there for about 4.5 years, which, if you're counting in dog years, is about 32.5 years. Had an amazing time. Just spreading the remarketing department to about 25 countries, helping to train a lot of folks. Super long on Tesla, as you can probably imagine. I've owned Teslas for years now. I understand a lot about these cars, and now being in the extended warranty space for Teslas, definitely have come to an even greater understanding of the long-term implications of owning one of these cars. So I appreciate being on the show today, and here to have a lot of fun, maybe shed a little light on stuff.
Well, thank you very much. And we intend to have fun. I acknowledge Harry and John and Larry that have joined us to put their 2 cents in. And Larry, remember, of course, buddy, I do have the mute button. So we're going to jump right into it. It's Ian, please go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. On the weekend, I was watching a couple different, I have this app on my smart TV called Haystack, and it sorts news. And there was some interesting stuff from an electric car maker, I guess a pundit, not per se on either side, but talking about electric cars. And the thing that was interesting about what he had to say was he was really getting into the The range piece, which I thought was really interesting, because a lot of people talk about strictly the cost, as you can see ahead on top of us here. But a lot of people, and this is something he said, because he was talking a lot about batteries and battery recycling and cost of vehicle and range and all that stuff. But the thing that he said, which I thought was kind of a novel point of view, was, well, how much range do you really need? And I think about vehicles like the Fiat E and the Smart Electric, and I think Volkswagen made one for a while. I think still makes it, that's kind of short range, and there's the Honda one in Europe that's very short range. But he said, well, do you really need 1,000 miles range? Does it really make a lot of sense to buy a vehicle like, for example, the Lucid Air with 1,000 miles range at such a cost, when you can really get by with one that, say, has, I don't know, 200 to 300 miles range? And I thought that was a really novel way to get into electric, but more importantly, hopefully to make it more affordable, because most people don't drive 1,000 miles in a day. I mean, that's just not most people. Well, I mean, John does, but everyone else doesn't, right?
I saw a post yesterday on LinkedIn about towing with a Model X, and they towed a luxury trailer, not an Airstream, but another brand I'm not familiar with. And of course, you get the pundits that come on the comments, which is really very funny. And they said on this Model X long range, whatever model they call it, the range dropped by 100 miles. So it dropped down to, I think, 350 miles. And the comment was, these days you can drive that far and you can make a stop and you can get either a supercharger or any charger, and you're up to 80% in 15 minutes or whatever it may be. And what's the point in talking about range? Because who the heck is going to sit in their car for 7 hours straight and not get out of it? And then, of course, the pundits come in. Yeah, I'll take an F-350 Super Duty over it any day. Yeah, that you can almost hear that tone of voice.
Well,
so it's funny, the range.
Well, I'll have to give you a thought from Alberta, the land of Canadian oil. We were there last week, and it was kind of interesting because I was driving around Calgary, and then I drove from Calgary to Edmonton. And I live in Vancouver, so there's lots of electric cars here, obviously, because we're on the West Coast. But I think you get bad stares from people driving one in Alberta, because it was kind of like, they were kind of a novelty. So it was kind of interesting to see sort of the stark difference. But
it's sacrilege to drive an electric car in Alberta.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Just the lack of cars that were electric was interesting. I'm sure Calgary has more.
There, I saw a total of single-digit electrics in the two cities total.
I saw 2 on a 2.5 hour drive from one city to the other. That was it.
Saw more than I did on the highway.
That was it. So anyway, why have EVs started exploding in availability with dozens of recent new entries? Is that due to OEMs buying the tech or deciding to speed up the tech they already were in the process of creating? So obviously we'll start with Brent, but anyone else is happy to chime in. So go ahead, Brent. What do you think?
I think it's kind of funny that, the OEMs who basically, spread all this FUD throughout the teens about Tesla and about electric cars, until Tesla started eating their lunch and basically picking their pockets. And now everybody's like, oh, EVs, we're all in, we're good to go. It's kind of sad, that they had to basically get their asses handed to them before they, decided to get into the space. So yeah, it's good to see that the OEMs are finally coming around. I think, and I don't know if it's even an issue for this show, but I think that the biggest issue that the OEMs have right now is just the assets that they have that are specific to building, gas engine cars. And so they're going to have to spin that off, maybe close a lot of plants, maybe retool a lot of plants. So there's a lot of expenses that they're going to go through before they can ramp up to challenge Tesla. And I think the video that you showed before the show, I thought it was really interesting. Is God, where was I going with that? Sorry.
Oh, the warranty should cover tires.
Yeah, no, that actually was pretty brilliant. And being in the warranty space, I can tell you every now and again we get somebody going, "What the hell? Your warranty doesn't cover tires." I'm like, I was pretty clear about that when you purchase.
And I should be able to service my own electric car. Let me service it
Not even
myself.
Pirelli's warranty covers their tires.
I'll tell you though, a lot of these tire companies do have like warranties on them that if you pursue them, I see it on the Tesla Motors Club forum a lot. If you pursue them, you can get a prorated credit towards your next set of tires if you happen to peel through them a little bit early. But yeah. So sorry, I'm a little bit mentally fuzzy this morning, but yeah, it's
Welcome to our club.
Yeah, right.
So a high performance car doesn't come with free tires?
Here's the point I wanted to make. So they had mentioned how like Ford was spinning off Ford E from Ford Blue.
Yeah.
And Volvo had, this going on. And I think what you may find is that a lot of the OEMs might spin off their electric vehicles, not only because they want to somehow cash in on the cachet of, EV stocks, which if you look at Tesla lately, I've lost a bundle, but also so that perhaps they can legally get around the union issue and the issue of being associated with plant closures and layoffs and all of that. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But yeah, good to see him in the space. The whole mission of Tesla was to move the world to electrification. So I'd be a hypocrite if I said I didn't appreciate the competition.
I do have to pipe in on that comment too, because we posted something this morning about the franchise model of manufacturers. And I also believe that part of this thing is how to get around the strong franchise agreements in the US and very likely Canada, because they're all modeled on it, to create a 4D, which says you're not a franchise, you're a distributor, or you're a delivery
agent or something. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk at that NADA this year from a lot of different pundits. And actually part of the reason I chose that video was they were talking a little bit about that if you watch the longer version. But realistically, and I think Ford, even though they may use that to reinvent the model, their justification was, hey, this is Model A and Model B. The electric car model is very different from an ICE model anyway. So we have to restructure in order to not only raise money to do this, because it's very costly to transition, but also it's going to be a different profit model. I mean, there isn't the service parts and oil products and everything else in there. There may or may not be the parts model, depending on your opinion on self-driving cars, even though there's been some lawsuits over that recently. But it's definitely a different model. And this show I watched on the weekend was also talking about the fact that recycling batteries is going to be a big business. And actually, a gentleman who used to be an engineer for Tesla, I think has a company doing that. Because, you're going to have in 10 years a bunch of batteries that, have a lot of valuable metals in them that you ideally want to be able to recycle if you can. Otherwise, you can have a mountain of these things. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well, actually, I have a feeling that it won't be long before a Ford dealer is going to have an 8-inch lift with 38-inch wheels on a Lightning with, all sorts of stuff, and very likely a sound system to make it sound like it's going four-wheeling, as it goes up there instead of it's going. But so Brent and our other guests, please join in anytime. So it's really widely promoted that EVs are far less complex with less parts than internal combustion vehicles. Shouldn't that simpleness be reflected in the cost? Or, of course, does this current cost to them really affected by the research and development? What do you think, Brent?
Well, yeah, a lot of our...
Oh, we lost him.
Oh, I don't know Brent, you have frozen.
So does anyone else want to comment while we're waiting for Brent?
I can jump in if you.
Yeah, go ahead. He's back.
Hi guys.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of R&D that goes into Teslas, as you can imagine. And I had a preacher friend of mine years ago, and used to say, somebody asked him one time, how long does it take you to write a sermon for Sunday morning? And he said 25 years. Yeah. So there's definitely investment that goes into anything that you're buying today, right? And so that needs to be recouped. And there's also profitability that investors expect to have. But I would say this: electric vehicles have a wear profile. It's just not a friction wear profile. there's on an average electric vehicle, there's about 20 friction points. On the average ICE car, there's about 200 friction points, pistons and rings and valves and valve guides and all the rest of that stuff. An electric vehicle has more of an electronic wear profile, right? You're moving an awful lot of energy through these different devices, and that has a wear of its own. So long-term wise, there's still expenses to be incurred. I think during the first 4 years, 50K, the Tesla warranty is there. You can pretty well expect to, change the washer fluid, maybe a set of tires. But long-term wise, they can still be quite costly. And so, owning these cars, although people want to think that it's basically just a big version of the RC car they had as a kid, these cars are quite underneath the covers.
Right.
Well, I do have to say, you talk about the service. I remember the old days of Toyota days of them being bulletproof, which they are pretty much in Hondas. I still commented to people, I says, they have service departments. They have profitable service departments. So there's a reason for it. And I'm seeing almost anywhere I go now, the Tesla, which was the anti-dealership model, are actually opening dealerships. And where we are now in Vancouver, Tesla has, I think, 3 or 4 service centers, and they're full. And they took over a dealer in the suburb of Vancouver that was a Nissan store. And I go by there probably once a week, and there are a ton of plated Teslas lined up for service. So we have a very interesting point there that they're going to need service at something, and it's more than just a, every 100,000 miles of a brake change, because they have regenerative braking, so they don't need to stop with brakes.
Well, there's been some discussion around that, and a lot of that's to do with weight. So it's that's part of the reason I picked that video with tires is if you have an extra 1,000 pounds in weight, even if it's a gas car, you're going to have extra wear and tear on tires and brakes. I mean, that's just the nature of weight. So, but the thing that was interesting around me is we have a Tesla store a couple blocks away from me, but they actually took over a separate service department to handle that. But I think a lot of that probably has to do with warranty work, I would guess. I mean, I don't know. I've talked to some of the mechanics early morning when I walked, but I think that, the nature of any car is you're going to have some warranty claims. You're going to have some maintenance needed. And realistically, you still need to do at least annual maintenance with any car today. And I would assume Tesla's no different. You still got to do a maintenance every year. You got to make sure the thing's safe, right?
No, actually, Tesla since 2007 are service as required vehicles. In other words, if nothing's wrong, you don't have to fix it. Which is, I mean, there's a few things. You should check your brake fluid every 3 years, make sure there's not moisture condensation in it, stuff like that. You should probably lube your brake componentry every few years just because of salt and corrosion. But for the most part, no, there are no annual maintenance on a Tesla and no really, miles wise.
Isn't there brush and plug flushes?
Yeah, exactly. And catalytic converters on Teslas are very expensive. So let me get a warranty against that.
I guess on the plus side, you have people stealing your catalytic converters like they are right now, right? Cutting them off your car.
They're chopping them off in parking lots. So people are just under there with hacksaws chopping those things off for the platinum. One thing I wanted to bring to mind too is that a lot of people don't realize this, but Tesla built a great car to manufacture and a hard car to fix. And what I mean by that is they built everything componentized. They didn't build anything to service. So like if something goes wrong with your power seat in a Tesla, you have to replace the entire seat because the entire thing is welded together. The seat covers don't come off. You can't unbolt it from the floor and change the tilt motor or anything like that. So if you have to replace a seat because the heating element in it or the tilt motor in it is gone sideways, you're out of luck. The front seat on a Model 3 is $2,000. A mid-row seat on a Model X is $3,000. Headlights on a Model S or Model X are $3,000 to replace the pair. And guess what? They go out in pairs, and pretty frequently actually. Ouch.
So I think you need to arrange for a pickup truck to back into you and drive away and do a hit and run claim.
There you have it. It'd be a lot. Yeah, exactly. Your $500 deductible rather than $3,000 for a couple of headlights. So they built everything for speed of manufacture, right? Because when you can have these things just in and you just bam, 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 throw them in the cars. But the problem is when it comes time to fix them, they really don't come apart to fix. You have to replace the whole component. So it's a well-kept secret of Teslas that they're super fast to manufacture, but they're real expensive to fix.
So for dealers, and I know no dealers are selling used Teslas right now. So for dealers who are selling used Teslas, and we've had some on the show before talking about, not being able to, I mean, there's companies now that gauge the battery and the battery life and remaining battery and these kind of things. But also, if you're looking at reconditioning and you're buying that car at auction or as a trade-in, for example, probably not that common, but at auction, is that something you need to be concerned with in terms of reconditioning costs?
The problem with Teslas is they're 97% self-diagnosing. And so if there's no light on the dashboard and there's no obvious creaks and moans and rattles when you drive the car around the block and over some bumps, it's pretty much, I mean, that's your PDI right there. That's your entire pre-delivery inspection on the car. There really isn't a whole lot outside of what it can self-diagnose. And besides, like I said, squeaks, rattles, moans, when you take it for a drive. So by virtue of that, unless you're a Tesla dealer, and I say dealer with air quotes, you really aren't qualified to diagnose anything past that point. And so that's where we come in actually at Xcare, because, when you purchase a Tesla on the open market and you have no factory warranty, we basically pick up that slack and protect folks.
What do you require a dealer to provide for you if they want to sell a warranty?
I got to preface this by saying we're not in Canada. We'd love to be there, and our long-term future plans are to be in Canada. No, we really don't require a whole lot. We do require that they're going to move a certain amount of EVs, right? We like to focus on dealerships that are heavy in the EV space or entirely in the EV space. There's Current Automotive here in Naperville, was the first entirely EV model in the country, actually, and they do an awful lot of Xcare. But we just want to make sure that we control the customer experience. We don't want, F&I managers saying, "Oh yeah, this covers everything: battery, drivetrain, tires, whatever you just need. Just $100 deductible, you're fine."
Yeah.
We don't need that guy selling Xcare. We need the guy selling Xcare that understands EVs, speaks EV, and basically can convey to our members what is and isn't covered, because we want to make sure that there's no false expectations.
So what would be a high volume in EVs from a traditional car dealer in your model?
5 to 10 a month.
Okay.
If you're heavy in the space, we love you to death. But if F&I keeps turning over, and sad to say, this is no derision at dealerships or their model or whatever, but oftentimes F&I departments at dealerships are a revolving door, right? They're in for 3, 4, 5 months, make a few nice heads, and let the next guy take the chargebacks. And because of that, you end up with this constant influx of people that don't understand what they're selling. But we really like to be concentrated on dealers, if they're going to sign up with us, that really know their stuff and have a good continuity of staff, or at least have the wherewithal to train the next person, as to what they're selling.
Yeah, we had
to be fitting for Xcare to get into Canada, especially in Vancouver, Montreal area, because boy, oh boy, the volume electrics up here in those two cities are phenomenal.
Plus,
God, I want to be up there so bad. I really do. But it's funny because we're not in Washington State, which is right on the border, of course, as you're aware, BC. It's the most business unfriendly climate in the United States. You have to keep a $1 million bond in Washington State to do business there. And you basically, so if you know that on $1 million you can make $100,000 a year, we basically would have to be $100,000 into sales before we break even in Washington State every year. That's just it's a ridiculous environment.
Ren, I might be able to help you. I was recently in Edmonton, and I believe if you tell them I'm not coming back, they might let you in. You might be able to use that as a win.
No, Larry, that's just you.
Okay.
Well, we did have a gentleman who actually runs an all EV model out of the Steel Auto Group that has locations in Canada and the US, and they bought a company that just sells electric used. So it's
nice.
and they're expanding that model. So it's kind of an interesting model. And I think there's similar models in other countries as well. But it was interesting that Steel, who I think had 40 stores at the time or something like that, bought this model. And we had the gentleman on talking about sort of EVs, I believe. It was really interesting sort of hearing sort of what their short and long-term goals were. But what do you think in terms of when EVs will become more affordable? If you're looking at sort of that average car price of say between $25,000 and $40,000, depending on where you are, do you feel that EVs will eventually be sort of at even with an ICE car in terms of price? And when do you think that's going to be?
Well, the tipping point has always been $100 per kilowatt hour, right? And so we're rapidly approaching that. As a matter of fact, I think Tesla's already broken through it. But I don't know the stats on that. But yeah, I think the point made earlier that most people don't travel, 5, 6, 800 miles, right?
Yeah.
Most people travel 40, 50 miles a day, right? 10 miles in and out to work, take kids to soccer, whatever. Even if you have a mildly bigger schedule than that, overnight charging at home can basically take care of all of your needs. So I think that there will be parity with gas engine cars when there's parity mentally in people's heads about what they need from their car. And when people come to the realization that they only need a couple of 100 miles a day maximum, that will be the tipping point, I think. And people are starting to realize it. They're starting to look at their habits. But honestly, aside from that, I think the future of automotive is not ownership at all. It's basically EVs picking up and dropping off people all the time. Because most of us, our cars are sitting literally unused for 23 hours a day, 22 hours a day. And so if you can have people get over the idea of personal ownership of cars and actually get into the idea of just being picked up and dropped off, when we get to a point where you can guarantee somebody in 5 minutes that a car will be there to take them wherever they want, then we'll be in that world. I think that world's about 10 years away. That right now we're still in a world where people want to own a car because they want to.
Brent, you've already seen the inkling, the beginning of that, because a few years ago you saw many dealers dealing with subscription services with vehicles where you weren't tied up long term. And I tend to travel a little bit for what I do. And you wouldn't believe how many services have developed where you can rent somebody's car, almost like an Airbnb, but for a vehicle. And you can see all the odd things that are happening as a reaction to electric cars. Jeff made a joke earlier about like the noise. How do you replicate? Some of the manufacturers that are developing electric motorcycles actually have noises you can simulate where you can still sound like a Harley. Because an integral part of that ownership is the sound and the noise. When you hear a car go by and it's loud as hell and you go, man, that's loud. Trust me, the person in that vehicle is loving it because it's loud. I'm a rock and roll musician. I always remember Pete Townsend saying when he came off stage from The Who, his ears hurt and he loved it. He loved the assault on his ears, the loudness. But I think the interesting thing is how the industry is getting pushed so hard. I was always brought up to under promise and over deliver. And it kind of seems like everything's getting pushed to let's do this immediately when we're not prepared immediately, either physically, in terms of how to get people on the road to keep them. And I agree with you 100%, Brent. Mentally, people aren't there because I can tell you, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm betting you and Ian and Jeff and Harry have had the same experience. You're just about to run out of gas, hoping you make it to a gas station. And once you get that, you still have that fear in your head, where am I going to find a charging station? So you know and I know, whether it's practical or not, perception is always reality.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. And, Tesla actually has a big leg up in that regard because their navigation system is actually optimized for their supercharger network. So when you are driving, it tells you where to stop. It tells you what stops are coming up, and you basically just pull over and charge. So you put your destination in, and your car basically tells you what to do, walks you there. So
I'm aware of that. Elon, when he couldn't get you on the phone today, reached out to me. Man, am I tired of telling him how to use his iPad? What is it with that guy?
I just want to tell him to just buckle down and run for a little bit. That'd be nice. No, I love what he's done, and no denigration to Elon. I think he's done a hell of a job moving the needle for everybody. But yeah, it is a mental thing. It really is. We have to get people over the hump of understanding that electricity is just another fuel, and that there are places they can charge, and it's really not that inconvenient anymore. I love the fact that I don't give a rat's ass what gas prices are. because I don't care, right? Go out and unplug my car and just drive. It's in the garage with a plug in it.
Well, here's the good part for you, because frankly, if you've got another new Tesla coming in the next couple of weeks, you flog yours, you'll get more money than you paid. I watched a Model Y at auction yesterday, or Saturday, go for about $5,000 more than MSRP, and that was a 2-year-old model.
Which is kind of amazing. I sold my Model X last November, and it cost me a grand total of $4,000 to drive it for 4 years because I sold it and recouped just about everything I paid for it. So it was pretty amazing. But yeah, the market is definitely a little bit weird in that regard right now. I think a lot of people are just kind of, they need a car, so they have to deal with the reality that they're in right now. But I think too, finally, the car salesmen have the upper hand. I mean, for years I sold cars in the traditional dealership model, and you'd have people coming in with all their printouts and their notes and everything. And I know what you paid for this car, and I know there's dealer cash and blah blah blah. I'm willing to give you $100 profit. Oh, that's awesome. $100 isn't going to pay me, and isn't going to pay the mechanic that isn't going to pay for the full tank of gas we put in your car. So the tables have turned right now, and auto salesmen are actually making some good money on the fact that they're in, no pun intended, the driver's seat right now.
Yeah, although we do believe that something's going to happen there, which we've discussed many a time. But it's very nice. What the top salespeople always did with customers that started playing that game was, you know what, sir, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. But, if that's all we're talking about, then let me introduce you to somebody else. Let me send you down the street to another dealer to do that. Now the customer goes, hi, do you have a car?
Did I get it today?
Can I get one someday? Maybe.
Well, it's interesting what Larry brought up about the sound and the sound for cars, because I was watching a test drive of the new Harley Live. I think it's called Livewire. Anyway, it's their new electric. And their initial prototype, they had a jet engine sound, but they're now talking about vibration, not sound. So the actual motorcycle vibrates, but there's no sound. But in one of the other electric shows we had, I think it's Harman Kardon or one of these, they're actually working on a model to actually sell you whatever sound you want for your electric car. So they're working on that. So there's definitely a lot of movement in that, because sound is definitely something that people are conditioned to. But having test drove most Teslas myself, I would say that the lack of sound is also an advantage, especially if you're a music fan. So it's kind of, depends on what you need.
I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of the Millennial Falcon sound. I'm sorry.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but Henry Ford, when he came out with the Model T, actually had an option where it would whinny like a horse. People really needed to have that horse sound to really feel like they were, driving a real vehicle.
He's the same guy that said you can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah, because black dried the fastest. He wanted to get his cars on the road. He tested all the paint colors, and actually black dried the quickest, so he went with black. But I think it's mildly ridiculous that we're trying to make ICE cars sound like, we're trying to make EVs sound like ICE cars.
Yeah.
I think motorcycle-wise, it makes sense, because loud pipes save lives. If you don't know that there's a motorcycle next to you and he's a real small presence in your rearview mirror, I think it's important that they have some noise, by virtue of the fact that they don't want to get hit. But I think there's also something to be said for the stealth value of a car, that you can stomp to the floor, go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds and not make a single peep of sound, because nothing draws a cop more than loud pipes. So
whoa. I got a ticket yesterday for going 10 miles over the speed limit, and they couldn't hear me. So no.
Yeah. I mean, disclaimer down the bottom, don't do this. But and end game though is, and you said about being a music lover, it's really nice to have just a nice silent car, so that music can just, be pure and simple.
Yeah, because
anybody. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah.
Is anybody talking about our government? Do we have enough electric to really go around if this country switches to total electric? And also, nobody talks about where that electric power is coming from.
Well,
Is it a coal-fired plant? How many wind-generated systems are in the country right now? Not enough where there's no pollution from it. And nobody talks about that half of the transaction.
Well, it's interesting.
Actually, here you bring up a really good point, and it was something that people brought to my attention when I was selling cars to Tesla. The average power plant during the night, which is when most people overnight charge their cars by sticking the plug in them, but most power plants at night are actually horribly inefficient because they're very power plants are at their best efficiency when they're running at a certain speed, right? And so what happens with a lot of power plants is to maintain efficiency, they actually ground electricity at night, literally ground it, send it to ground. Because if they go down enough to demand, they're not efficient enough. The speed of the turbines and everything else is like a tipping point, right? And so actually having more people go to EVs, they won't be grounding as much electricity at night that they're producing because they have to maintain a certain speed, a certain production to be efficient. So a lot of electricity is wasted every night that could be just going into your car. Also, a lot of people are going to rooftop solar along with their cars. Tesla will sell you a solar system for your house as well. That's amazing. Actually sheds snow during the wintertime because of the heat generated by the panels. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of that argument, unfortunately, comes from the petrochemical industry that sees their market share slowly slipping away. But yeah, the real economics of it are that charging at night is not only cheaper for people, but it's also environmentally more sound because of the fact that the power plants are going to overproduce at night just to maintain efficiency.
Well, the other thing, and they were talking about this, I think even Ben Stock was talking about this in Manhattan, but is really, can the grid support 100% EVs? I know we're not getting there overnight, even though politicians would want us to get there. Realistically, I think it's going to take years. But, to your point, I mean, when you look at British Columbia versus Ontario, for example, or probably a lot of West Coast cities versus Central or Midwest, I mean, virtually all our power in BC is already generated by hydroelectric anyway. So, I mean, we really, the power source is that. The question is really the grid and the charging infrastructure. When you look at big cities with maybe a lack of, in condo developments or other housing, a lack of charge points, that's a big question. I think Ben Stock said, yeah, you got to sell a 300-foot electric cord with it in Manhattan to charge the thing, which I thought was kind of funny. But Jeff, you had a question? Go ahead.
I'm the president of my condo association, and it's a 7-story building. And we're talking about putting charging stations in, but the cost, because of how our building is set up, where we would need the charging stations, it's just prohibitive for us. I mean, someone who has electric car, and then how do you give that spot out every night? One person gets it, or they got to be out of there in a half hour in the middle of the night. And a lot of discussions are happening about it. And then I said, oh, I'll just run an extension cord out my back window. Of course, that's not going to happen. So it's a big issue, especially in cities where there's a lot of condo type buildings and high rises.
Yeah,
I mean, that's very true.
We just did something in our condo building. I think the government pays for the assessment. We've had a number of people ask. And the big thing that always comes up is A, the cost to put it in, but B, who pays for the power? So that is the big issue. But, the cost of charging the car might be in BC maybe $7 or $8. So it's kind of like, but what I've noticed with a lot of newer buildings, not brand new, but newer buildings, is they've at least put in 110s in every space. Now, in parts of Canada where it's too cold, I mean, they've already got those for block heaters, so they could obviously repurpose that. But, it's definitely something that I think is going to be interesting to see how it transitions. Because when you look at population density, I mean, clearly, if you've got condos, and there's hundreds of units, I mean, how do you do that? It's an opportunity as well, though, because that might increase the value of that condominium long term, just because you have that option, right?
Yeah. Hey, Brent, let's say you do, we're looking into the future, and you are running out of your charge, and you do hit a charging station. There's, by now, let's say there's enough on the highway. How long does it take to charge it?
You can get an 80% charge in a new Tesla in about 15, 18 minutes. So time enough for a sandwich, a pee, and a coffee, and back in the car.
What about another brand?
Other brands are also coming up with quick charging. And one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is Tesla is slowly transitioning their supercharger network to allow non-Tesla brands to charge there. So which is good for the non-Tesla brands. It's also good for Tesla. I think one of the things that people don't realize with Tesla is that they have all of these different revenue streams that are going on. And as soon as they open up their supercharger network to these off brands, I shouldn't say off brands, but different brands, they're going to see a whole new spike in revenue. So there's so many ways in which Tesla has all of these different streams of revenue that are coming in that are so unrelated to the actual sales of their vehicle, the software updates, the various, like every month you pay $10 to have access to the internet and all of your streaming music and everything. That all just tick, 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 tick adds up.
Hey, Brent, he actually should have named the company Edison rather than Tesla, because while they were both brilliant, Edison was much more pragmatic and more of a business person, hence his success, and Tesla was the great never was. Because this guy, other than being a dreamer, seems like he's got every business aspect nailed down, which you got to give him all the respect in the world for.
Well,
Oh,
maybe
God, yeah.
Tesla's easier to get as a name.
Well, I think Edison probably, they would have had a fight with half the power companies in the U.S. that are somehow have Edison in their name.
And I have to tell you, speak about a business model. I saw a charger the other day, and a lot of people in big downtown cities, they'll park their EV car at a parking lot charging area, and they hook up the plug and they walk away, and they don't charge their car. They get free parking and they walk away. So I saw one the other day that you have to pay before it releases the plug, the charging unit, and it charges you from the moment it goes out to the moment it comes back.
Smart.
So the bottom line is, for those people, you charge up your car in 10 minutes, 80%, 100% in an hour and a half or whatever it is, and they park for 5 hours, and they're paying, $2 every 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've seen people basically take lipstick and write obscenities on people's windshields that plug hog like that. It's kind of a bastard thing to do to plug in and just leave, right? Go into the mall and stay there for 3 hours. And what bugs me too is Teslas have such incredible range, and it just pisses me off when I go to the Whole Foods and somebody's got their Tesla plugged into the EV charging space. Don't be a jerk. I mean, leave after the Nissan Leaf or the guy with the Bolt or something like that that's trying to get home. Don't plug your Tesla in. It's got 350 miles of range.
Your mistake was where you went. You went to Whole Foods. Go to McDonald's or a pizza joint, and you won't find that place in person.
Actually, here in the States, I don't know about in Canada, but here in the States, the Starbucks are all going to be outfitted with electric vehicle charging, which I found really quite cool. Now they got to get their people used to not sitting on the plug like they sit at the corner booth for 2 hours on their laptop drinking one latte.
Well, no, Starbucks is apropos because it takes so damn long to get a drink from them. You do have plenty of time to charge your vehicle.
So is that a model where Starbucks will get the revenue much like gas stations are doing now? Is that the idea?
Actually, I think it's going to be a free amenity for now, but yeah, they could probably monetize it later as it becomes more popular.
Because I've seen gas stations transition. Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure before the end of the show that we did address the core question, which is, are EVs worth 50% more?
Yes.
I think there's a lot of ways that you can qualify that, right? From an economics perspective, cost per mile, they're definitely dirt cheap to operate. Long-term maintenance, they can be a little bit more expensive. That's where X-Care comes in. But overall, there's also the idea that a lot of people just feel good about driving, right? They feel good about not contributing, at least individually, to climate change, to just breathing noxious air. I mean, I was in downtown Manhattan last year, and it was just, I was walking down the street, and it was just like, good God, it was like literally like sucking a tailpipe. And so there are a lot of ways, both, physically, monetarily, where they're worth more, but also just from a social consciousness perspective, and just trying to do a little bit on your own. The definition of a lot is a big pile of little things in one place. And if all of us do a little bit, it'll have a lot of effect. And so the value of owning an EV, so is it worth 50% more than a gas car? In my opinion, yes, because that's where my heart and head are. But also from an economics perspective, over the long term, even putting a warranty on your Tesla, it'd still be a lot cheaper to operate. If you looked on the EPA stickers here in the United States, we have this thing called the Monroney sticker. You probably have something similar in Canada.
Same thing, yeah.
And on that sticker, there are all these different boxes about, content and where it was manufactured, where it was assembled, and all this stuff. And there's a box here in the US that says average fuel cost per year.
Yep.
And if you look at that, that's about 5 times as much as it would cost you to simply plug in your car. So over the long-term life of the car, answer is an unequivocated hell yes. They're worth 50% more than a gas car.
I do have to say something though, and this is something when we first started talking about this topic for the show, I took a look at. And depending what segment of the market you're at, that isn't true. They're not worth 50% more. And I'll start at the higher end. We have a Lucid studio here, and we're not going to get into a debate, Brent, whether you think they're good or not, because I don't know. But I got to tell you, they're damn sexy. And it's 200,000 Canadian. Get you a car with a Bentley interior, with a, I don't know, a Ferrari exterior if they made a sedan.
It's a gorgeous car.
Jet engine performance, and you can't buy a Bentley in Canada for $200,000. Their cheapest one is like $260,000.
Yeah.
And that plus. So on the high end, I don't know, a Model X, if you compare that with an ML63 Mercedes or a X5M or whatever else, even an Audi Q5, well, a cute e-tron is now electric. But the fact is on the higher end, that isn't true.
Yeah.
On the lower end, well, yes, I know you can buy a regular Golf for in the States, $22,000, and an e-tron is $38,000. That's true, but it's getting lower. You look at the Kia and the Hyundai new EVs that came out. They're not a heck of a lot more than their comparable gas cars.
Very close. Yeah,
they really are. Now, question is, can you get one? That's the thing, right?
Yeah. Well, when you look at hybrids initially, they were about $8,000 more. Now they're pretty much the same price. So I think eventually that will even out. Like how long it's going to take, who knows? But I think eventually when you have enough models on the market, there's going to be downward pressure. And on the high end, I agree with you, Jeff. If you're looking at a Model S Plaid, you're not really comparing that to a Toyota Corolla. Like that's not really the comparison.
No, but I have to say Brad's going to get so mad at me here. The interiors of the Tesla are nice, but
they're rolling iPhones. They're basically an iPhone that goes really fast.
Yeah, exactly. And they are a smidge faster than the Lucid Air, whatever it is. But as I said, sitting in both of them, I got into the Lucid and I went, oh my God, because it has that. What do they call their interior? It's eco-friendly leather.
Je ne sais quoi.
Which isn't vinyl. And you get inside and it's got that smell that makes you tingle. You get
Jeff, all kidding aside, their whole goal was to approach it from a luxury viewpoint. It's kind of like how when Lexus set up, even though it was built by Toyota, it was designed to be heads and shoulders above a Toyota. Same thing with Affinity, with Nissan, and Acura with Honda, and definitely with Hyundai, with the models they have now, where it's just night and day, compared to what a Hyundai is. So that I'm not 100% sure that's a fair comparison, because as much as Tesla seems above the market, Lucid was designed to be above them. Correct, Brent? It was designed to be a luxury model.
Yeah, very correct. And also, if you consider how many synthetic cows have to die for the interior of a Lucid, the conditions that they raise those synthetic cows in, it's really sad. It's really sad.
I'm getting a little skeptical of your motives. You kind of remind me of John Denver throwing beer cans out of his private plane while talking to John Kerry about the environment. I just have a feeling if I went to your house and we looked behind the house, There'd be a Camaro SS, and you'd be laughing at people broken down with their lower model Teslas. It's okay. You got to say ass and rat's ass 2 or 3 times. I'm permanently banned from 11 Providences. I don't get it.
No. Here's the truth. Brent goes up for a drive in his Camaro SS with a 454. He wears a wig and glasses and a big long-haired one. He sticks on the fake tattoos with his tank top, and then he goes for a ride.
Wait a minute, Jeff. Brent, did I hear wrong? Did you say you're from Michigan?
Illinois.
Illinois. All right. Well, that's close enough. You're in the heartland of Ford, Chevy, Chrysler. I was just in Canada. This is saying I hate hockey.
You know what? You would be surprised how many Teslas I sold into Michigan. I actually sold 3 people from their state legislature Teslas. So it's amazing.
Wait a minute. You're telling me a politician wasn't sincere about his constituency? Now I'm
I know it's a shock. Being from Canada where they all are sincere. Here in the United States, we have a sincerity problem, at least in Michigan, vis-a-vis Tesla, that's for sure.
Well, it's here's a question I have on my list too, though. So what do you think is going to happen with road taxes and with the stuff where the government's all tax fuel up the wazoo?
Yes.
And they use that, they say, to pay for roads, to pay for infrastructure, etc. Yes, I think they use it for the 747 with the non-synthetic leather seating. What are they going to do to make up for that taxes as EVs grow more and more and more?
What's your electric bills?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That they may indeed do that, or they may meter your home charging. That could be a way they could do that. Also, a lot of these cars now are highly connected to the internet. They have over-the-air software updates, etc. So there could be a way that state DMVs could basically just tap into that and have a use tax, miles per year. I've always been a fan of license plates being tied to the gross weight of the vehicle. So if you drive a big fat F450, Ford, you should pay more than the guy driving a Corolla because you're doing more damage to the road.
No. That's a work vehicle. That's a work vehicle, man.
All right. Well, you can have ones that are purely plated for work that are probably like they have the plates for over the road trucks. But
Brent, I'm based out of America too, and you winced the same way I did when earlier on last year they were talking about a mileage tax.
Yeah.
They'll never underestimate the government's ability to tax. They'll find some way, shape, or form.
Well, there was a case in the I think it's in Australia. There was a gentleman who's a big EV pundit online, and they put in a kilometer tax on EVs. We had to take a picture at the beginning of the year and a picture at the end, and then you submit it, and then they tax you. Well, they overtaxed him. They sent him a bill for 25,000 Australian dollars, and then when he refused to pay it, they said, "Okay, we just won't let you drive the car." So now he's fighting them in court. So I think there's definitely some interesting stuff going on there. And I think it will be as the scales tip. It's going to be an interesting political dance because the other argument, at least in where I am, is the environmental impact of it. What do you do when the environmental impact is negligible or not as much? Do you charge them less? How do you do that? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. But I think infrastructure definitely has to be supported. Where that money goes, who knows? Politicians.
That's the same argument, Ian, they've had for years in America. They just have a flat tax, and you pay as per what you consume. But again, no matter what we do, however we do it, we know the government's going to, wherever planet you're on, the government's going to waste as much as they can and find a way to take as much as they can. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, the guy who can't balance a checkbook can't fix the planet. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Well, the question is, though, when we talk about the taxing, because one of the big things for many EV places, depending on the jurisdiction right now, is government tax breaks and incentives. And I think in Canada, Quebec, it's ridiculous.
17,000?
Here's what I don't understand. You spend $100,000 on Model Y. Think about that for a minute. 100,000 now, US $75,000 on a Model Y. And the government gives you back $9,000.
It's more than that in Quebec. It's $17,000 on an EV, some provincial, some
I'm trying to
federal.
make this for Americans because they don't understand Canadian.
Okay, $10,000.
Yeah, 10 grand back. I got to tell you,
Hey, Jeff, we understand when Harry and I got pulled over for speed, we explained we confused kilometers with miles per hour.
There you go. There you go. I tried that in the States. It worked for me once. Actually, sorry, it's in Canada, and I was driving a U.S. sourced vehicle with no kilometers on it. Sorry, it wasn't in the States. In the States, if you're going, if the speed limit's 55, and you're doing 55 kilometers an hour, you're going to get run over by even a Fiat. But so, do you think? How long do you think this is going to continue, where people are going to pay huge premiums for EVs, Brent?
Well, I think, to address the original thing about government incentives, I think that there's a tipping point where they're going to slowly peel those back. They did that here in the States, and they'll probably do it in Canada sooner or later. And to Larry's point, as soon as the government realizes that their gas tax revenues are going down, they're going to find another way to pick your pocket. So ultimately, it's just when that tipping point occurs, when governments understand that their social engineering has worked, and then we're going to see some type of use tax is my supposition. But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, the governments need money to pave roads, and if we're using the roads, it just makes sense that sooner or later we have to pay for it. So it's been a nice ride so far.
Well, federally in Canada, they actually have an EV rebate, but that stops at basically the upper mid-level of an entry-level EV. So it's 45,000 Canadian, which gets you into a base model EV6 or a Leaf or even a Kia Soul electric. But once you put in a sunroof, you don't qualify anymore. Because it just puts it that much over.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And there was also some discussion, which was kind of interesting. Some companies, I'm not sure if it's VinFast, there's a couple companies now that are trying to break the battery out and charge you for the battery separately. So like you're buying the car, but you're leasing the battery as a way to make it more affordable, which I thought that kind of died, but I hear that's still around. So I guess there's some companies that are still trying to look at ways to amortize that and make it more affordable too. So there's definitely some creativity there for sure.
Well, there might be something there. I mean, but I think ultimately, honestly, to my point from earlier, I think that we just need to work towards the post-ownership world, where people can just call up a car at any time. And I think Lyft and Uber have made a lot of people a lot more comfortable with the idea of not owning a car. When you can guarantee that somebody has a car within 5 minutes, I think car ownership will plummet. Not only that, but you'll have differentiators. You can order a platinum pod, and it comes with a mini bar and gummies or whatever the hell you order.
I actually see that point predominantly in the big cities and in the. How would I don't want to get there and making a comment politically, but the LAs, the Seattles, the New Yorks, Boston, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, I can see that becoming in the core.
Yeah.
Because once you get outside, even here, we don't have an enormous amount of land in Vancouver because we're surrounded by water, border, and mountains. But even you get a little bit outside of the core, 10 miles outside of the core, and things are still pretty much spread around. And to be able to guarantee anything in 5 minutes there just isn't going to happen. But in town, I can see that because even, I live in downtown Vancouver, and until recently when I had to start traveling out regularly out to the suburbs, my wife and I were down to one car, and we would car share or Uber around here. And now their prices are going up, and it's almost not worth it.
Jeff, you almost need to get some younger people involved in this discussion, because I'm kind of rooted to the fact that I like having my own car, and it's mine, and I feel kind of proprietary. Now, again, I know that Paul McCartney was in a band before Wings, so we may need somebody slightly younger than me to tell me what their feel and take on that is. And Brent, also, do me a favor when we're done. reach out because I'd like to get more information. I'm a trainer, recruiter. I'm all over the place. And you definitely sound you have a product that some people would be interested in.
Yeah, I'd love to help you with that. As a matter of fact, why don't you hit me up on LinkedIn? We'll connect and we'll get an offline conversation going.
And it's interesting that you brought that up, Larry, because I stayed with my brother in Calgary. He has 2 daughters that are in their 20s. And actually his sister-in-law was there with her, I guess, daughter, who's in her 14, 15 years old. The thing that was interesting was both his daughters, one of them has a car that she shares with her husband. The other one is finally starting to learn to drive, but she wasn't motivated to learn to drive for a long time because she just didn't feel the need for it. So a lot of it is
like Texas
mindset. Yeah. I mean, it just, I mean, if she didn't live a distance away from the city, which she does, she probably wouldn't need to be licensed. I mean, she just would do transportation in other ways. And I would argue the same whether it be Chicago, New York, Toronto, wherever it might be.
Well, my argument was the old nature nurture thing, need versus want.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody on this program is capable of calling an Uber or doing this or that. But man, I'll tell you, when I get back off a trip, it's very cool to get back into my own car with my own junk in it. So, I'm probably showing my age, but there's a lot of things going on now that I never thought I would see or how I would see them. But who knows? Brett, you probably have your finger on it closer than I do.
Oh, we could always take this out a little bit further and just like do away with marriage and just have like on demand,
Oh,
It's called prostitution.
oh.
That already exists? Shit,
Yeah.
I thought it was
Well, I was watching this show. I was talking to Jeff about it. It's a bunch of deceased stand-up comics, George Carlin and the like. And there was they were winning awards. So it was an award for, I don't know, some sort of award show. So they had George Carlin, Robin Williams. Who's the lady comic that we were talking about?
Oh, Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers. And then the gentleman who lit himself on fire and survived.
Richard Pryor.
So Richard Pryor was on some talk show, and the talk show guy was going, "Well, I heard you grew up in a brothel." Well, we called it a whorehouse.
But getting back onto cars and EVs, Ian mentioned about the batteries, and the first time I saw a Rivian with that center tunnel, and right now they got a camp stove, I wonder if somebody's got a thought in their head at that company that is where we can put removable and replaceable batteries. What do you
There's
think,
some
Brett?
discussion about that for sure.
I know it's a little bit left field, but being totally untechy, what do you think?
Well, removable, replaceable battery in that tunnel, that battery would be horrifically heavy. So I don't know. You'd have to. It's a lot of weight. Those things are just incredibly heavy. The battery on your typical Model 3 weighs about 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'd be definitely leaning, from the little I know about it, I'm no expert like Brent, they'd be leaning more in the future to charging them than changing them out or shifting them around.
Yeah,
just the nature of where they're going.
There has been discussions about that, swapping out the battery. I just don't think it's a realistic model for a lot of long range cars. It might be for like that new, I think it's a Renault. It's like, it goes like maybe 30 kilometers an hour max speed. It's like this little tiny car, like a smart car, but it's very cheap, but it's a city car. But and we've had the gentleman from Unity on before. It's again a city car, but I think for those and even the gentleman from Electromechanica, which is very much their model is a delivery car for like Domino's and stuff even. But I think for that car with more than one seat, yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge.
Well, with smart cars, Ian, the right accessory would be a Bible. If you have a heavy bicycle nearer my God to thee,
So what you're telling me is you're not an owner for a fleet of smart cars?
I like a big American car or a foreign car, something heavy. I haven't, unfortunately, Brent, I haven't converted yet to the concept of electricity. I'm flexible. Obviously, anything can happen. I mean, 35, 40 years ago, we would have talked about the world and said, well, the Berlin Wall will be down and everybody will have a computer on their phone. They would have looked like you were crazy. My hero, Ben Franklin, said, when you're finished changing, you're finished.
Yeah.
You guys don't understand. Larry lives in his car. Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
A lot of people don't realize that the smart car has the strongest door handles of any car produced in the world today, because they have to be strong so the pallbearers carry it.
Well, the one thing about a smart car is if somebody hits them, unless they squish them, they just bounce away.
It's sort of like hitting a cue ball.
That's right.
You know, Brent, I've sold about 32 zillion cars, and I can't remember how many times I'd smile at somebody and say, for a few dollars more, don't you want to ride in something comfortable? Because a lot of people spend a considerable amount of time in their car, long commute, they take a lot of trips. And I never quite understood the concept. If you're going to be in a car or any vehicle that much, wouldn't you want to be at least a little bit comfortable and enjoy yourself a little bit? I mean, we're not here forever. And I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. I understand there's a practical side. You can pat yourself on the back for what you've done environmentally, but I don't know. I guess those people see life a little differently than I do.
Well,
There's one major argument, Brent, against your thing about people will be subscribing to a car to come pick you up every 5 minutes. And that thing is what are you going to do when a car picks you up and you want to rock out to Journey and sing at the top of your bad singing lungs, and there's somebody there or a robot recording you or something.
Nice.
Where in your own car you're singing.
So Jeff, we got 2 minutes left, just so you know.
Thank you. Sorry, Brent, go ahead. He cut you off. He was so rude.
No, all good. You know what? At the end of the day, that's what earpods are for. But yeah, you're never truly private, right? There's always some bozo next to you with an iPhone that can record you dancing.
Well, hey, if it's the earpods, you're also going to need a face mask, like what's his name from Batman? So you just hear yourself unless you turn it on, because then everybody will get you. Brett, final comments, please. We try to finish up soon.
You know, it's been a pleasure chatting today. I think a lot of what we've talked about today comes down to perception and people's idea of value, and just, not only the monetary value of driving an EV, but also the social value of it, the emotional value of it. And I think for a lot of people, it's worth a lot more to drive an EV just by virtue of those points. But at the end of the day, we all have to find what we're comfortable with. I'd like to see maybe a little less rancor on either side of the issue. I think there's quite a bit of stuff out there, from the oil companies that see shares slipping away, and just a lot of people that are resistant to change. I'd like to see a lot more people just accepting of people's choices. And I do believe that electric is the future, and I'm happy to have been my part of helping to build Tesla. And I think at the end of the day, the more competition in the space, the better. And I'm looking forward to seeing just amazing, cool stuff coming.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Harry, for your input. Larry, John being here. And we appreciate it. And of course, at the AutoHub show, we always have our topic, and then we go way off into left field. So, but thank you, Brent. I really appreciate you spending your time with us and sharing your expertise, because you give us a different view, which is really nice, because so often too many people are very polarized on their thing. No, electrics are the end of the earth. It's a conspiracy to get rid of American values. And on the other side, the electric strong proponents are saying, oil is the root of all evil, and that a certain gentleman in Russia actually just used that to drive up his share values of something or other. And so it's very nice to hear. I thank you, Ian. I'll leave it to you to close off the show.
Yeah, definitely check out anything you can on the changing landscape. I think that when you look at it from a service model point of view, you look at it from an OEM point of view, you look at it from a strictly cost of ownership point of view, I think the biggest takeaway for me, as was before I hit even the show, is really look at how much you drive in a given week. I think people are buying too much electric car. Like that $100,000 dream car that's electric may not be the right car for you, not because of brand, but maybe because of range. I mean, I have a good buddy who wanted to buy one recently, and he ended up buying a used Leaf. And the reason was he doesn't drive very much, and he saved some money on the car, and it fits his needs. So really look at what your needs are and buy what makes sense. You got to start somewhere. Maybe that Model S Plaid or that Taycan 4S isn't the car for you.
Hey, one last thing.
Lamborghini Huracan isn't.
Hey guys, one last thing. In terms of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I didn't even want to start down this road, but there are so many things that are built based or through petroleum that the whole concept of, let's just shut down the gas industry doesn't make any sense anyway, even if we do transition with our cars.
Oh, 100%.
That's my thought.
100%. I think you're going to see a lot of nuclear. That's my thoughts. Anyway, have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.